This video is a painting tutorial for this 1x1 inch Fox whittling project. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can check it out right here. So we're using the same basic technique for painting as I did on my previous painting tutorial. That was more of a general guide. Similarly to that video, we're going to start with the white parts, and with this you don't have to water down the paint too much. We're starting off with the lightest colors and then moving on to darker colors, because when you're using acrylic paint and watering it down a lot, it's impossible to cover darker colors with lighter colors. So there's going to be a little bit of white over here on the stomach and also here in between the hind limbs. But the main area for the white color is the underside of the jaw and the neck. And then we also have the tip of the tail. Then we're going to move on to the main color, which is this orange. And to get the right shade, I'm mixing the red in to the yellow bit by bit so that it doesn't become too red. And I always do this with other colors too, so that the darker color is mixed into the lighter one. That's pretty good. But then, in order to not make it too unrealistic, I'm putting in just a little drop of blue so that the color will be a bit more brown and not so bright. And then it's time to water down this paint. I want to retain the texture of the wood, and I want the paint to act more like ink so that it just gets sucked into the wood and doesn't remain on the top as a plastic feeling surface. And in places where I want the color to transition smoothly into this white part, for example, I'm using a little bit more water to create this gradient. Right now I'm adding a little more paint to the head and the back so that these areas would be slightly darker. Now we need to wait for this to dry, and then we'll move on to the darker parts. Next we're gonna make the black parts. And for this I'm just watering down this black paint, and I'm starting from the paws, which are gonna be the darkest parts, and then making sure that the color transitions smoothly like this when we go higher up the leg. Now the grain of the wood, in my case, is gonna affect how smooth I can make this gradient to be, but that's alright, it doesn't matter. I think it's nice to see the texture of the wood. But how much the wood grain will show really depends on what wood you're using. I'm also adding a little bit of black on the ears and over here on the eye sockets. The tail also has a little bit of a darker color oftentimes, which is why I'm putting just a little bit of black, very watered down black on the tail. I'm adding just a little bit of a brighter orange still, because the dried up version of the color I used ended up quite pale. Once you're satisfied with everything that we've made so far, it's time for the nose and the eyes. And for that, I dried this brush pretty well, and now I'm just gonna take a little bit of this black paint, and without watering it down, I'm making the nose. That leaves a little thicker layer now, and then the eyes, which are just gonna be thin lines. And then if you mess it up like I did here, basically the only way to remove this is to make a small cut